Hello and welcome to Cloudforest Vibes. My name's Bobby, and this is how I grow orchids and carnivorous plants. Hello and welcome to Cloudforest Vibes. So this is going to be part 2 of everything in my tank. This is the Lepanthes and the couple others that I didn't include. I'm going to move right into this. I don't want this to be too long. I want to kind of show you all these plants and then have a quick chat. So here we go. This is round 2, all of the Lepanthes. Alrighty, so the first Lepanthes that we're going to take a look at is Lepanthes fimbriata. This Lepanthes I got from Tarzan, and it's doing well despite the fact that you do see some yellowing in some of these older leaves here. None of my newer growths have that, but they are kind of cup shaped. Not quite sure what happened there. I think perhaps it suffered some root loss, but it has grown some roots. It does have some active roots on it. I have been considering remounting this. I put it on here with live sphagnum moss. This was the first Lepanthes that I ever tried to do that with. And I'm thinking about changing that and going back to my normal just zombie moss setup for it. I think the live sphagnum grows just a touch too wet for it. Having that said, it's still doing well. I haven't seen a new growth come out in a while, so again I'm a little concerned with that. Some of these growths are a little floppier than others, which again, something else that's a little bit concerning. But overall it is a really nice plant. It's very vigorous, and it has these lovely little blooms that are always out. Tiny little orange and red things. They've got just the slightest of fur to them, but they are really neat little blooms. The mount is healthy, it looks good, it's got lots and lots of live moss on it. But again, I think it is just slightly too moist for this orchid, for what it wants. So that is Lepanthes fimbriata, and we will go take a look at another one. So this plant is my Lepanthes auriculata keiki that I'm growing on in the tank. I have it mounted here. It is doing well. It's got lots and lots of root growth on it. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's put tons and tons of roots on in the tank, and I'm really happy about that. A really good sign that this keiki division is going to do exactly what it's supposed to do. It did lose one of its growths. It had 2 new growths come on it, but only one of them matured, unfortunately, but it did get to a fairly decent size. So I'm hoping that this spring will induce some more new growth on it, and this plant will push on and become healthy and strong like its counterpart in the tent. So this plant is my new Lepanthes Insectaflora, and I'm pleased to say that it does have one active spike on it already, this one right here, and it's got 2 new growths, 1 and 2, that have pushed on since it's been in my care. It looks like it's getting another new growth started back at the back, which is a great sign. I did mount this with a little bit of the live sphagnum moss, so I'm going to keep a really close eye on it. But this one is the red sphagnum. I think the one that I used, oh, I can't remember now. Anyway, I just need to keep a close eye on it. If I have to, I'll go back to the zombie moss. But the plant's looking good, and yeah, that's really all I have to say. I haven't had it that long, so we'll move on to the next one. So this lovely little Lepanthes is Panthes Predosa. I got this, another one from Tarzan, and I got it 6 months ago or so. It had like 2 tiny little growths, these little tiny leaves down here. I believe this is probably like a flaskling or a seedling plant. I think we're a ways off of getting true blooms. It's put on all these growths for me. It's doing really well. It's got another one coming on right here. And it does push out these teeny little, I don't think you'll ever be able to see it, but these teeny little flowers that come out, but they're not, they look nothing like what they're really supposed to look like. So that's why, again, I think this is a juvenile plant. I think it's just trying to catch up to itself, and one day we will see what the blooms are supposed to look like. This one has live moss on, but it's a combination of live moss and forest moss, and I think this plant does a lot better than the other one. So this is another option. I grow it moist, just like the other ones, and it is happy. So this is another one of my favorite Lepanthes. This is Lepanthes hexapus, and as you see, it is again covered in blooms. We just looked at this plant. I won't spend too much time on it, but what you see is what you get. This plant is very floriferous, especially in this time of year with the cooler weather. I've got it mounted with a little bit of zombie moss, and it just grows phenomenally. It gets bright shade, lots and lots of airflow, and again, it really is doing quite well in these cooler temps. The newer growth kind of comes out this purplish color. I don't know if you can see it. Let's get it as close as we can. The new growth comes out this purpley color, and it's got a patterning on it. Really, really pretty plant. And the purple color fades, but the patterning kind of stays on the older growth. So a very attractive Lepanthes with really, really cool blooms. Hopefully you can see these. And yeah, I just love this one. So definitely one of my ones I recommend, especially if you can grow intermediate. A great plant. And yeah, again, one of my favorites. So what you are looking at now, this is Lepanthes guatemalensis blooms. This plant I got from Tarzane not that long ago, and it just burst into growth. It's grown several new growths already. It's got several more coming. It's grown roots, and it immediately started throwing out spikes again. I had cut all the spikes off when I first got this plant, and this just shows you how vigorous and floriferous they can be. It's a really nice little plant. This thing's got, like I said, tons and tons of new growths coming, tons of roots. I mounted this again with a little bit of zombie moss, and it's doing fantastic. I haven't had it that long, but it just fits right into my environment, and it's got these lovely yellow and red blooms. How can you beat that? So we just took a look at Guatemalensis. This is Lepanthes dominguensis. Similar in a way, but totally different growth habit. The spikes come from the bottom, they kind of dangle down. You can see I've got a bud here, a bud here. There's another one forming in the mix down there. This is not as floriferous as some of the other Lepanthes species, but the flowers do hang in there a little bit longer. These tend to last upwards of a week, week and a half sometimes. The other ones, sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's 3 days. It just depends on the species, but some of them are very, very much not long-lived. These aren't necessarily long-lived, but in the Lepanthes world, they are. They're pretty long-lived. Really neat little blooms, really unique shape to them, and again, they present themselves quite nicely. They hang underneath the leaves, and again, if I give you the side profile of that, you'll see that they hang down and they face straight out, so you always get to see them. Really, really neat little species. So here we have Lepanthes mariposa. This is another one of my absolute all-time favorite species for two reasons. It's very, very vigorous. I mean, it just puts up growth after growth after growth. It's one of the most floriferous Lepanthes, despite the looks. And again, it's kind of deceiving. You look at this, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot going on. But when you flip the plant over, there's just blooms upon blooms upon blooms. Oh, sorry, let me get in there. Everywhere you look, there is little awesome blooms. It is like this almost 365 days a year. I don't think this plant has been out of bloom since I got it. This is one of the two species that I can say that about. Since it started blooming, literally, it does not stop. Lepanthes mariposa, a must-have, very, very easy to grow. I have it mounted again with some zombie moss. Pretty neat looking leaves. They come out really shiny, but then they dull down. And then the bottom side of them is a slightly different color. It's a purpley kind of color with those awesome blooms. So here we have another awesome species. This is Lepanthes Yuxoria, and at a glance you might mistake this for mariposa, but it does have larger foliage, much larger foliage, and the blooms, although they are nearly identical, they do have subtle differences. Your Yuxoria blooms, first and foremost, are much larger. That is way bigger than a Lepanthes mariposa. They have similar coloration, but if you look at the actual petals, which are the projections out to the side, they are different. You gotta look close. I'll try to do a side-by-side video shot or something here. But they are very, very much very similar. But this one is, again, extremely floriferous. You get double blooms, and it is nearly almost always in bloom. So I'm hoping I can get triple blooms and stuff on this little guy this year. But it is one of those ones that kind of hides them. But the newest growths for me up here actually are not. They are projecting their blooms straight up and straight above the leaf. So they're very highly visible, and it's a very, very attractive bloom, like I said. Very much like Mariposa, but the plant itself, you can see it's a lot bigger, and so are the blooms. So Lepanthes Yuxoria, another must-have Lepanthes. Very easy to grow. So this is yet another one of my Lepanthes species that definitely deserves a close-up. This is Lepanthes Helicocephala, and it is one that puts out more blooms than any of my other Lepanthes. This plant is literally always, always, always in bloom. Double blooms, triple blooms, everywhere you look. Blooms, blooms, blooms. Very hardy, very vigorous growing. If you see through the mix, literally it's speckled with yellow and red at all points in its life, 365 days a year. This thing is like this, covered in blooms. Since the day it started, it has been in bloom. I don't know if I can stress that enough. Very easy species to grow. Another one that enjoys bright shade like most other Lepanthes, and it does well in higher humidity. And I think this would probably be more tolerant of a little bit less humidity as long as you have the right media. It does put out a lot of aerial roots for me. I don't know if you can see this or not, but up here on the mount, let me zoom in and refocus. Up here on the mount, it has developed an absolutely unreal root system through the moss as well. But I do believe that this Lepanthes would do just fine in small bark or perhaps even a seedling mix in a pot in just about anybody's environment. If you were scared to grow these plants, I think this one might be a really good one to get started on. And again, how can you go wrong with a plant that gives you this many flowers all the time? It really is phenomenal. Lepanthes Helicocephala, this is probably my second favorite Lepanthes at this point in time. Absolutely won my heart. What a lovely, lovely plant. So this plant is my only Lepanthes hybrid. Probably one of the only ones that you'll be able to find because they are a pleurothallid. Pleurothalids are notoriously hard to hybridize. So this is Lepanthes sherrybridiham. This is a hybrid between Lepanthes Calediction and Lepanthes Telepagona Flora. It has these awesome blooms that kind of share the characteristics of each. And I do happen to have a few open right now. This plant does far better for me in the wintertime than it does in the summer. It kind of slows right down in the summertime, so it's an intermediate to cool grower for sure. And the best part about this is it's really split lots and lots of the traits of its parent plants between the blooms, the foliage, every single thing, and you kind of do have the best of both worlds. I do think it's fussier to grow than either of the parent plants. I think the Telepagona Flora and the Calediction are two of the easiest to grow Lepanthes, but it is a really awesome plant, and I had to have it in my collection because I do love the parent plants so much. That is Lepanthes sherrybridiham. Get a closer look at this bloom, and then we'll get out of here. Now it's truly almost impossible to talk about Lepanthes orchids without bringing up this orchid. This is Lepanthes Calediction, one of the parents of the plants we just looked at, and just about everybody's favorite other than Telepagona Flora, which I have saved for last, of course. This is a gorgeous Lepanthes and very floriferous as well, but look at these leaves. I mean, With leaves like that, you almost don't even need blooms. The blooms are not big, they only last a few days, but what they lack in size and longevity, they certainly make up for in abundance, because once one drops, it isn't usually but a few more days and another one takes its place. And each leaf has flowers, so when they're in different cycles, you literally can go in here at any point in time and there is always flowers on this plant. Now, if you look at it now, it's hard to believe that I almost lost this plant. It came to me in a bad way from Equigenera. It really was in terrible shape, and it has taken me 3 years to revive this plant and get it back to where it is actually a healthy, happy plant. It's been a long upward battle, but you can do it. I learned so much about growing Lepanthes from this orchid, and if you guys are interested in getting into these plants, I highly recommend that you start with this one or the one that I'm going to show you in a moment. Now, this final Lepanthes in my collection needs very little to no introduction, but this is Lepanthes Telepagona Flora. This is my absolute favorite orchid in my entire collection, and I do recommend this to anybody who wants to get into Lepanthes. This is one of the most easy growing Lepanthes that exists. As beautiful as it is also easy. It has really spectacular blooms. They're orange, they're somewhat translucent, they're iridescent. They have a little red and orange purple kind of center to them, lip area and petals. And yeah, they're just phenomenal. They are awesome plants and very easy to grow, guys. I promise you, if you can find a way to keep your humidity up, give them intermediate to warm temperatures, they will be happy. They grow really nicely for me, and I do have this mounted on zombie moss, believe it or not, but it has been overrun with live moss, and that is how they like it. They like it moist, they like a lot of air movement, they like the brighter side of bright shade, and they love intermediate to warm conditions. It really doesn't get easier. Your house has the perfect temperatures to grow this thing. If you can come up with some sort of a terrarium or a jar or anything and give it some light, you are going to be able to grow this. You just need to figure out a way to get it fresh air. And yeah, before I had this in my 10-gallon terrarium, it did not have that great of airflow. This plant still did outstanding, but since I've moved it, it has really done well. So my favorite orchid in my entire collection, and definitely the star of my tank, Lepanthes Telepagona Flora. We only have 2 more orchids to look at. We're going to look at them simultaneously, but this is absolutely the one. This is my centerpiece, this is my showstopper, this is my superstar, Lepanthes Telepagona Flora. So I was going to talk about these last 2 plants in one shot, but it was too difficult to get them too close together to film the right way. So this is my Dendrobium Cuthbertsonii and a Phanerochilum hybrid. I have absolutely fallen in love with Dendrobium Cuthbertsonii types. They might be my second favorite type of orchid next to Lepanthes, and there are definitely a ton of different ones. So this tank to my left is going to get filled, I mean filled, with more Lepanthes and more of these Dendrobium Cuthbertsonii hybrids as this next year goes on. I do want to fill up this tank. I want it to be absolutely chock full of these types of blooms and the rest of the Lepanthes that are in my to die for list. So give me a good reason to start a new project and build a bigger one. But anyhow, this is an awesome little one. It opens up a little bit more white than this, and it turns this lovely pink color. I mean, it is just so beautiful. They're long-lived. This plant has literally been in bloom for months, and it's really not that small. It's you know, it's a small dendrobium, of course, but it's pretty decent size, and it seems very vigorous. It's got new growths coming all over the plant, new roots coming all over the plant, and I am very hopeful for things to come for this for the future. Now, this final plant is the only plant that I can honestly say right now that rivals my love for the Telepagona Flora. This is my Dendrobium Cuthbertsonii species. This is the red variety, and this plant is absolutely unreal. It is so beautiful. It has been in bloom for months and months. The first bloom fell off, these two opened up, and I feel like it's going to be in bloom for even more months. It's doing well. It's got this huge new growth here. It's got a good one coming on the side. I mean, this new growth in the front is something else. Look at that guy. Big new growth. Happy, happy plant. I've got it mounted here with live sphagnum moss on this cork bark. And I mean, look, just look at these blooms. How can you beat that? Look at that thing. Really, really, truly gorgeous. Lovely plant. Oh, I'm hooked up. Lovely little orchid. I mean, it is really, really, again, really hard to beat a bloom that looks like that. So, that's it. That's my video for today. I'm going to end it on this guy, because why not? Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed my tank tour. That literally is every single thing in this tank. And yeah, it's doing well. I really appreciate your guys' support. I love that you guys love these plants as much as I do. And please continue to watch, because I have huge plans for this channel coming forward in the next years. So thank you so much. I'm getting close. I crossed the 400 subscriber mark, and we're well on our way, so I'm gonna have to make an announcement soon. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I'm gonna do, but we're coming up to 500 subscribers, and I am gonna do something for you guys to try to give back just a little bit. So thank you so much, and until next time, please stay safe and happy growing.